Hello and welcome to this deep dive. Today we're tackling a really significant piece of proposed legislation in the UK, the Climate and Nature Bill. You, our listener, flagged this as something you wanted to understand better, so thanks for bringing it to our attention.
It's definitely a bill with, well, potentially huge impact. So, yeah, a crucial topic.
Absolutely. And to help us navigate all the sort of angles, we're joined by Dr. Oliver Nash. He's a senior policy analyst, specializes in environmental law and governance. Thanks for sharing your expertise today.
My pleasure. And actually, a quick thank you to Westferry Times as well. Their reporting has been really invaluable in understanding the details here.
Right. So our mission for this deep dive, get a clear picture of the Climate and Nature Bill's core aims, understand who's backing it, who isn't, and why it's such a, well, a hot topic right now. We want to equip you with the key info without it being overwhelming. And we know, partly thanks to sources like Westferry Times, that the bill just passed its second reading in Parliament. That's a big step. Okay, so let's get right to it. In simple terms, what's the fundamental purpose of this bill?
Well, at its heart, the Climate and Nature Bill is really designed to legally compel the UK government to first stop and then actually reverse the decline we're seeing in biodiversity, and at the same time, achieve net zero carbon emissions. It's all driven by these core principles, a just transition, making sure it's science-led and bringing in citizen perspectives too. It's quite an ambitious attempt at a legal framework.
It strikes me that it's tackling both climate and nature together. Why is that joined-up approach so important?
Oh, it's fundamental because the climate crisis
Yeah.
and, the biodiversity crisis, they're deeply interconnected. Think about it, healthy ecosystems like forests, wetlands, they absorb CO2. So tackling one without the other is, well, it's really missing a trick. The bill's integrated approach gets that link. Then when you sort of dig into the details, the carbon emission targets are pretty notable. It's not just about CO euros, right? The bill includes legally binding targets for reducing methane and nitrous oxide as well, potent greenhouse gases. That broader focus is a really key detail.
Definitely sounds more comprehensive than just CO2. And what about the nature recovery targets? What makes them stand out?
The key thing there is the stress on scientific data.
Yeah.
The bill explicitly says these nature recovery targets must be based on the best available scientific evidence, not just, driven by political convenience. It's aiming to make sure our efforts to restore biodiversity actually work, tackling the root causes rather than just setting sort of arbitrary goals. What strikes you about that?
It feels like it's trying to ground environmental targets in objective reality, take some of the politics out, which, yeah, makes a lot of sense. Now, I know there's a pretty unique element involving citizens here. Can you explain this Climate and Nature Assembly?
Yeah, this is a really interesting, potentially transformative bit. It proposes creating a citizen-led climate and nature assembly. The idea is this assembly, made up of a representative slice of the public, would have a formal role, scrutinizing the government's progress on meeting those legally binding targets. It's a mechanism for accountability, really, injecting public oversight. It does raise questions, though, about how it works alongside Parliament.
A novel approach to accountability, definitely. And you mentioned it also takes a broader view of emissions, beyond just UK production.
Yes, and this is critical for getting a true picture of the UK's impact. The bill requires the UK to account for all emissions linked to goods and services we consume here, including those generated overseas during production, transport, everything. If you think bigger picture, you can see how that might push for more sustainable global supply chains. Stops us just, exporting our environmental footprint.
That feels like a major step towards real responsibility. So who are the main players pushing for this bill?
Well, it started as a private member's bill, brought forward by the Green MP Caroline Lucas. But what's really remarkable is the cross-party support it's gathered. You've got Labour backbenchers, quite a few Lib Dems, even some Conservatives backing it. Especially MPs from rural areas, perhaps seeing the impacts more directly.
That level of cross-party interest is pretty striking for a bill like this, and the support goes beyond Westminster too, I gather.
Oh, absolutely. There's a really powerful, diverse coalition outside Parliament. We're talking over 400 NGOs, environmental groups, conservation bodies, that kind of thing. Plus, a lot of scientists, academics, lending expertise, youth movements like Fridays for Future, bringing that, urgency, and even faith groups seeing it as a moral issue.
Yeah.
It really shows the breadth of concern.
Sounds like a real groundswell. But, okay, such an ambitious bill must face pushback. Where's the main criticism coming from?
That's right. Some Conservative MPs have voiced reservations. mostly about the legally binding nature of the targets. Their concern is it might create inflexibility, maybe hinder the government's ability to react to, say, unexpected economic issues.
And what about businesses? Any worries there?
Yes, industry and business lobbies, particularly from sectors like agriculture and manufacturing ones with a bigger footprint, have raised concerns. They're worried about compliance costs, the potential impact on competitiveness, that sort of thing.
Okay, and the citizen assembly part, you mentioned any legal flags raised about that?
Yeah, that's an interesting point of debate. Some legal scholars have questioned it regarding um, parliamentary sovereignty. The worry, as they see it, is that giving a binding oversight role to a citizen assembly might theoretically challenge Parliament's ultimate authority.
Yeah.
So it touches on how bits of our democracy interact.
Right. And just practically being a private member's bill, what hurdles does that create?
Well, historically, private members' bills don't have a great track record. They often get bogged down, especially in the committee stage where they go through detailed scrutiny, amendments get debated, they can stall there. However, like we said, the public pressure this time, the general awareness, maybe things are different, especially with the potential election looming.
So what's fueling all this attention right now? Why is this bill so prominent?
It feels like a convergence of factors, really. We've had these increasingly severe weather events, floods, heat waves that really, bring climate change home for people. Then you've got the steady drumbeat of urgent warnings from scientists, the IPCC, the UK's own climate change committee, underscoring the need for action, like now. And maybe also a sense that on the world stage, with policy shifts elsewhere, the UK has a chance to step up, show leadership again.
And is the public actually demanding this kind of action? Is there evidence for that?
Absolutely. Opinion polls consistently show strong support for tougher environmental laws. Westferry Times and others have reported figures like over 65% of voters backing stronger climate laws. And that number's even higher among younger people, 18 to 34s. So yeah, there's clearly a public appetite for this kind of ambition.
Okay, let's try and make this more concrete for people listening. Can you give an example? How might this bill affect a specific local issue?
Sure. Take the problems with agricultural pollution affecting rivers, like the River Wye, for instance. Under this bill, local authorities could be legally required to create and enforce nature recovery plans with specific measurable targets for water quality, biodiversity there. It would move beyond just, voluntary schemes or guidelines.
So it shifts things from voluntary to legally required locally.
Exactly. And think about cities, too. The bill could drive things like urban rewilding projects, create more green space, stricter air pollution rules for health, much tougher checks on new developments that might harm parks or habitats in cities. That would directly affect quality of life for urban residents.
Okay, so it's past the second reading. What happens next in Parliament?
Next up is the committee stage. This is where a smaller group of MPs goes through it line by line. They scrutinize every clause, look at proposed amendments, debate the nitty-gritty. It's a crucial stage. It can really shape the final bill.
And what role will the big political parties play going forward?
Well, the Labour Party's position will be really key. A number of their backbenchers support it, but the official party leadership has been a bit cautious so far. If Labour threw its full weight behind it, that would give it significant momentum, increase its chances.
Realistically, though, what are its odds of becoming law exactly as it is anytime soon?
Well, passing second reading is a big deal for a private member's bill, but yeah, it still faces major hurdles to pass entirely this session. A more likely scenario, maybe, especially if there's a change of government, is that key ideas, key sections from this bill get rolled into a bigger government-backed environment bill later on.
So even if this bill doesn't make it through untouched, its ideas could still heavily influence future laws.
Absolutely. And if we zoom out, think bigger picture. If something like this passes integrated climate and nature, binding targets, public accountability, what wider impact could that have?
Sounds like it could set a real standard for other countries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It has the potential to establish a kind of gold standard for this type of legislation globally. Could inspire similar moves elsewhere, Australia, Canada, the EU maybe, and for the UK, a major statement, showing continued environmental leadership post-Brexit.
Dr. Oliver Nash, thank you so much. That was a really clear, insightful breakdown of the climate and nature bill for us.
It was my pleasure. Glad I could help clarify things.
So just to quickly recap for you, our listener, the Climate and Nature Bill, it's this ambitious UK proposal, wants to legally force government action on stopping biodiversity loss and hitting net zero. Built on ideas of justice, science, involving citizens, it's got wide support, but faces real political, economic challenges as it tries to become law.
And what's fascinating, I think, is how it reflects this growing global understanding that these environmental problems are linked,
Hmm.
and need serious, joined up, legally strong answers.
Which brings us to our final thought for you. Given the strong public backing, the scientific urgency we talked about, what do you think is the single biggest hurdle for getting meaningful, comprehensive climate and nature laws passed in the next few years?
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah,
How societies weigh up that urgent environmental need against all the other pressing economic and social demands.
indeed. Thanks for diving deep with us today. Until next time, stay curious.